welcome to this brand new episode of The Cover, a show where we share a sneak peek of the latest Business Today magazine with all our viewers. I'm Sakshi Batra, and with me on the show, I have Vidya S, also Aakansha Chaturvedi joining in, and Prerna Lidhu. All three of them joining in to discuss the key stories that you will find in the latest issue of the Business Today magazine. So it looks like an all girls house today on the cover show. Welcome to all of you girls, and thank you so much for taking the time out. Now, we all know that the cover story this time around is about the latest buzzword, moonlighting. Now, we do know that there's a huge debate going around about this. Vidya and Aakansha, you both worked in depth on this story, on this cover story. So let me start with you, Vidya, to understand, first up, for the benefit of all our viewers, what exactly is moonlighting and why is this such a big problem for the IT industry?
So to put it in a very simple term, moonlighting is actually the practice of having a second job without the knowledge of your primary employer. So this can technically fall into two buckets. One where you are generating an income while holding a second job, which is directly in competition with what you're doing at your primary job. And the second one could be an income generating side gig, which may not necessarily be related to what you do in your day job, but something maybe like a hobby or a passion project on the side.
Right.
So if you look at it, the IT industry has been extremely critical of the first category of moonlighting, which is where you hold a job which is in direct competition of what you do in your day job. But if you look at it, the second category is not without complications either. In India, technically, there is no law that prohibits dual employment,
Yes,
but
that's
there
true.
is something called the Factories Act, which prohibits, but that is mostly applicable to manufacturing jobs. So the IT sector is mostly exempt from it. So that is what we
Absolutely.
stand at it on it right now.
Vidya, help me understand what has been the view of employees right there. I'm sure you must have spoken to many employees of the IT industry right now. What do they really have to say about this whole issue?
Right. A lot of them have actually come out on public forums to make their opinions clear and their stance very clear on the subject. So we've mostly had people who've been very critical. The major IT firms have been critical of the practice. But there have been some proponents of the practice as well. For instance, we've had Tech Mahindra's Mr. CP Gurnani coming out and saying that that he doesn't have a problem with it and that he might actually consider
Yes,
formulating a policy. So if you
yes,
look at it from a very generic point of view, most of their concerns are around the fact that attention gets divided, their loyalty comes into question, the usage of resources and things like that. But very specific to the IT industry, if you see, the sector itself is a very high performance sector which functions on multiple contractual caveats with their clients as well. So a lot of their concerns are from the fact that they may that allowing employees to moonlight formally would actually lead to some kind of a misuse of confidential data, of breach of very confidential information, misuse of some kind of resources which are licensed, and
right.
also of course breach of contract that they have with their employees, which prohibits their employees from functioning on different clients at the same time in that particular role. So these are really their specific concerns.
A whole lot of companies have strictly come to call it an absolute cheating in a way, from the biggest of the biggest IT firms that we have, the bellwethers, coming in against on it completely. Is there any way going forward, can the IT industry really look at embracing this practice, or is it a complete no?
Recently, Swiggy actually came out with a formal moonlighting policy where it has said that they will consider when if employees are transparent with them, they can work out an arrangement with them. But if you look at the way IT companies function, right, it's a lot more complicated for them because they function on all these kinds of contracts with external clients, as opposed to
Hmm.
Swiggy, which does a lot of work which is internally for its own platform.
Hmm.
So for them, if you see a lot of concerns around these kinds of misuse of data and confidentiality and breach of agreements that they have with their own security, with their own clients, if you see, considering all of these things, it's going to be it has to have a nuanced conversation, and it may actually depend on, it may vary company to company. So a lot of them have a lot of things to consider, the ramifications on their contracts that they have with their clients. Also to look at the fact that many of them work on mission critical projects, some of these employees. So to what extent can they give access to moonlighting employees to these kinds of projects? And also of course the fact that the industry is seeing a lot of resignation also, so attrition is very high in that industry. So a
Very
blanket
true.
ban actually dent their attractiveness among employers as well. So that's another factor that they have to keep in mind. So considering all these things, it's not going to be an easy decision for them. It is something that they may have to only evolve over time, is what experts are telling us. So yes, it's not going to be a yes or no kind of a debate with most of them. It's going to come with a lot of riders, if at all.
Okay, understood that. So, moonlighting still is a hot debate right now. Lots of developments still to follow. A lot of clarity still needs to be, seen from a lot of IT companies. They need to come out clear on, what they will, appreciate as a practice among their employees, and also to understand whether this would warrant a larger law in place, not just for the IT industry, but for all the services industries that are in place in India, whether that will make way for it as well. All of those things will be important to understand, and I'm sure our viewers and readers will definitely get more insight from your stories. But Akansha, let me bring you in right here at this point in time. Now, you got to speak to a whole lot of employees of the IT sector as well. Tell me if clearly there has been any mention about this, that employees cannot do moonlighting, cannot work even in their free time. Can they not outsource us for some other companies, perhaps who are not direct competition as well? Help me understand, what have you come through understanding of this?
So the employment contracts of top 5 IT firms in India actually prohibit their employees from working with anybody else. They clearly state that you cannot have employment with anybody else in any capacity. Some do have a provision that if you are interested in working with somebody else in any capacity, you can actually get a written consent from the company, but the company can withdraw that consent whenever they want. So, in a way, companies do frown upon this practice. Like Vidya just said, that they're very critical of this, and they don't usually use the term moonlighting, but
Yeah.
they present it in a way that you cannot have secondary employment.
While we are talking about moonlighting and how is the industry really looking at this practice, there's also this another issue that you brought about, and that's about companies really honoring the employee contracts right there. Help me understand, what have you really come to understand on that front as well, and whether that also is a concern among employees and the IT sector really looking at those now.
Well, Sakshi, it seems like since the IT sector has a lot of exposure to the downturn in the West, since since they have a lot of exposure there, they're having less business as we see, and they had given out offer letters to many people when the markets were booming in the West, when the markets were booming here. So many of those people who had been given offer letters have not been given a joining date. As of now, it's been over 12 months, 15 months in some cases. People actually left their jobs since they had an offer letter from a different company, but they haven't been hired yet. All the big names you talk about, Infosys, Wipro, HCL, Tech Mahindra, Mindtree, all these companies have not onboarded a major chunk of their employees, and many of these are also freshers. So this actually, brings up the question that are we actually facing an IT winter? Is that an IT meltdown? Is that what's going to happen in the coming times?
Prerna has very interesting story where she has understood some clear insights on it from Truecaller, which is one of the most popular, apps in the country, which is about caller ID and spam detection. Prerna, why don't you go ahead and tell us about, what have you found out about Truecaller, its ways of functioning? It has been hugely successful in India so far. The reasons behind it, and what does it look forward to doing now?
Right. Thank you so much, Sakshi. And it's a very important question. And while I got into the story, I unravel so many layers. There are so
Yeah.
many sides of the coin that you understand. For example, spam detection, scam calls, etc., is a huge problem in countries like Brazil, India, growing economies. And this is something that needs to be tackled. And Truecaller was like had a first mover's advantage there, and it sort of captured the market like nobody else. Its biggest market is in India. 75% of the revenues come from India. It's a Swedish company. Even now, if you open the app, it says made in Sweden and India. So India is such an important market for the Swedish company. But then, will its over dependence on India come back to bite it? Because India itself, Indian government try is working on its own Truecaller like app, because there have been issues that have been flagged by the defense agencies and a lot of independent research saying that Truecaller is not handling handling the user data very well. And it's a problem with a lot of these new age companies, be it Facebook, Google, Amazon. We keep hearing things about data prevention and privacy
Yes.
that
Yes.
our citizens need to be more aware about. So that is why this story deals with this entire double-edged sword, that while we need apps like Truecaller to for spam detection, which is sort of like a public service in some way, and people need it. That's why it's so popular in this country. But on the other hand, there also needs to be really strict laws about it, and it has to be regulated. So I think the
Right.
story covers both very, very important aspects of the story.
Okay. Just like how you pointed out, Prerna, of course, data safety, data security issues, there have been discussions on it around the company as well. Now, as India also gears up for the data protection law in the upcoming, say, perhaps in the budget session, there is an expectation. Could it really affect Truecaller's pole position that is in India right now?
Yes, I think not just Truecaller, any company that is today monetizing, sharing data without the user's consent is sort of in for a trouble. They will have to go through a lot of checks and balances now that
Yes.
the new law is going to be in place, and it's expected to be out in the February session. So let's really hope for a tighter bill, tighter law this time. Cybersecurity experts and lawyers I've spoken to, they are very clear about the fact that the kind of supremacy Truecaller has enjoyed in India will not, that stay will not continue as it is. And that's also because companies like Truecaller have sort of exploited India's unique policy vacuum. We do not have too many laws on privacy. We don't have a law on data protection. We don't have a very strong cybersecurity law. There are provisions in the IT Act that work, but those are hardly ever implemented. So I think the law would really help. And and there are all eyes on Truecaller on companies like Truecaller, because I'm talking about this particular company. The financials have to be stronger. They can't, for example, bill most of the amount in Sweden, earn from India, and then they not report a lot of their revenues from India. So all of those checks and balances, whether it's finances, whether it's data related, whether it's where are their servers based, they have localized their servers, but there are still questions on data breach that the company needs to answer. So all of these really critical questions, where public data, your and mine data is concerned, I think things will fall into place once a law is, we have a law in our hands, and we can see that something is being changed.
Absolutely. So, yes, hoping that the government hurries up on getting a clear law in place so that our data protection and data safety concerns are taken care of as well. And with that, we come to an end of this episode of The Cover. Hope you got a lot of insights about what the IT industry is really looking at in terms of moonlighting. How are the industry players and the employees also looking at this hot debate? In case you're looking for more insights, do grab your copies of the Business Today edition to get more insights about from all the industry players. What are their thought processes as far as moonlighting is concerned? Thanks a lot for tuning in on this is show.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.